Industry insiders expect Stewart-Haas Racing to sell one or more of their charters by the end of this year. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. So much happening today in the world of NASCAR. If you haven't already, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button down below to stay up to date on all the latest. A couple huge stories broke this afternoon. I want to start with Richard Childress Racing. I guess RC finally decided to leave the 8-team roster alone for a change and instead is tinkering with the 3. Keith Rodden is out. Justin Alexander will be back atop the pit box for Austin Dillon beginning this weekend at Martinsville. Keith Rodden will take on a different role within Richard Childress Racing. Justin Alexander, he's worked with Austin Dillon for many years in the past. In fact, all 4 of Austin Dillon's Cup Series wins have come with Justin Alexander. It's never a good sign when you need to make a crew chief change this early into the season, but in the case of Austin Dillon and that number 3 car, something needed to be done. They brought Keith Rodden in at the start of last year, and Austin Dillon put up arguably the worst numbers of his NASCAR Cup Series career. And things are off to perhaps an even worse start the first few races of 2024. 1 top 20 finish in the first 7 races? Oof. You can't put all the blame on Keith Rodden, though it's worth noting his resume wasn't exactly impressive to begin with. When I think Keith Rodden, I think about, the few years he spent with Kasey Kahne. I went back to double check the stats. He won 1 race with Kasey Kahne at Hendrick Motorsports in 3 years. They missed the playoffs 2 of those 3 years. I think it's safe to say Justin Alexander is a better fit for Austin Dillon. They've had some success in the past. I've said this time and time again. Austin Dillon gets more hate from NASCAR fans than he deserves. I get it. His grandfather owns the team, but Austin Dillon's a solid driver. He's won a Truck Series championship. He won an Xfinity championship many years ago. And even in the Cup Series, Austin Dillon has made the playoffs 5 of the past 8 seasons. He's not a championship caliber Cup Series driver, but he's proven he can be a playoff contender when in the right situation. Justin Alexander, Austin Dillon, that seems like a successful situationship in my opinion. Hopefully they can start to turn their year around. This next story is quite the coincidence. Just a few days ago, just last week, I did an episode where I sorted some race teams into 2 different lists. Those most likely to try and buy a charter this year, and those teams most likely to be selling at least 1 charter this year. I sorted Stewart-Haas Racing into the latter category, and now a story just broke from Adam Stern, Sports Business Journal, where he writes that industry executives believe Stewart-Haas Racing is the team most likely to sell 1 or multiple charters before 2025. Stern says that this possibility has become a hot topic in the garage area in recent weeks, at least according to the multiple industry executives he's talked to. He also reports that without a new charter agreement for 2025 and beyond, the only investors shopping around for charters are ones already in the sport. He specifically mentions Trackhouse, 2311 Racing, Legacy Motor Club, and of course, Junior Motorsports. Man, Junior Motorsports, is absolutely interested in a Cup Series charter, but if they balked at the prices 2 or 3 years ago, I find it highly unlikely that they'll pull the trigger at the current price. Still, Adam Stern, reputable reporter, reports it. Junior Motorsports is a powerhouse in the Xfinity Series. Why wouldn't they at least be interested in a Cup Series charter? Certainly a team worth keeping an eye on, though I wonder how it would work. If Junior Motorsports goes to Cup, would Rick Hendrick have to sell off his stake of the team? Right? He would, right? Maybe I'm wrong. A couple of those other teams that Stern mentions, Trackhouse, 2311, those do not surprise me at all. Again, referring back to my video from a few days ago, I sorted 2311 and Trackhouse into this category. I expect them to be very aggressive in their pursuit of a 3rd charter. I am a little surprised to hear Adam Stern mention Legacy Motor Club. I know they've gotten a lot bigger since last season. I read an article this offseason that says they expanded from 70 to 120 employees. I get that Maury Gallagher, co-owner, has pretty deep pockets, but this is still a relatively young team that just joined Toyota. They're just getting a taste of Tier 1 status for the first time. So I'm a little surprised to hear Legacy Motor Club's name mentioned. I would have expected RFK Racing, considering Brad Keselowski has been very public about his pursuit of starting a 3rd full-time Cup team. They've rolled out the 60 car this season. I think RFK is very interested in a third charter, but they were not mentioned in this article. It's interesting to speculate who might be in the charter market, but let's talk about Stewart-Haas Racing, because according to this report, much of the industry expects them to sell. I have so many questions. If Stewart-Haas does sell, which charters do they choose to sell? One charter or two? If they sell, which driver or drivers get the boot? We still don't know which manufacturer Stewart-Haas will partner with next year. Their contract with Ford ends. Will they still be a key partner team? And if Stewart-Haas does leave Ford, what does that mean for Chase Briscoe? I think his contract is with Stewart-Haas, but he's been a Ford driver in the past. So many questions, so many layers to this topic. These anonymous industry executives leaking these comments to Adam Stern. Are they just saying this to try and put some pressure on Stewart-Haas Racing? Do they actually know what SHR is supposedly planning to do? It's so many layers. That's what I'm trying to say. I certainly think it's realistic that Stewart-Haas Racing would sell off at least one charter this year, especially if this team loses their Tier 1 status with Ford. They gotta sell. They have to downsize. Look around. There aren't any 4-car teams in the NASCAR Cup Series without direct manufacturer support. I think Spire, I guess technically has 3, and I don't think they're a key Chevy partner, at least not yet, and they've kind of struggled out the gates. You hate to sell a charter, I know, because then if you ever want it back, you'll likely have to pay more than what you sold it for. But considering Stewart-Haas's recent struggles, if they lose that key partner status, I think they should downsize. Let's talk about the drivers, because if Stewart-Haas Racing does in fact downsize, someone's probably going to be the odd man out. I'm going to sit here right now and make the case both for and against every current Stewart-Haas driver. Beginning with Chase Briscoe. He's only 29 years old, but he's the only active Stewart-Haas Cup Series driver with a win to his credit. He's made a deep playoff run before, made it to the round of 8 in 2022. Right now, he's 18th in the regular season standings, best of all SHR drivers. He's had good support from sponsors like High Point, Mahindra, and just before the start of last season, Briscoe signed a multi-year contract with Stewart-Haas Racing, a deal that Briscoe called a huge stability, a contract that Tony Stewart said will keep Briscoe in their cars for many years to come. Has he lived up to the hype he generated in 2020 when he won 9 Xfinity Series races? No, probably not. But he has been, I believe, the second best Stewart-Haas Racing driver behind Kevin Harvick the past 2 years. Good talent, great work ethic, and seems to have strong relationships with sponsors. That's Chase Briscoe. Then there's 33-year-old Ryan Preece. Took over that number 41 car last season, and I think was marginally better than his predecessor. Kind of a rough start to the year, but finished last season with 4 top 15 finishes in the final 6 races. But he's only got 1 top 15 through the first 7 events of this year. He's tied for 30th in points with his teammate Noah Gragson, but both drivers would be actually up around 23rd if not for the 35-point penalty they both sustained a few weeks ago. Preece has shown flashes, man. I think back, it's been a long time now, but remember when he bet on himself, ran a limited schedule with Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series, won that race at Iowa? He looked fantastic for a couple years there. I still think Ryan Preece has an extremely high ceiling, but at 33 years old, he's not as young as some of these other top talents coming up through the ranks. One of which is Noah Gragson, who's only 25 years old, the youngest of Stewart-Haas's current stable. Gragson has been a pleasant surprise so far this year. After a dismal rookie season, Gragson completely changed his mental approach, and so far he has taken full advantage of this fresh start with Stewart-Haas Racing. He already has 2 top 10 finishes the first 7 races of the year. He's got 2 more 12th place finishes at Phoenix and Richmond. He's also landed some new sponsors. Black Rifle Coffee, Bass Pro Shops followed him over, but he's had like Fantic and Serve Pro and Rush Truck Centers, of course, jumped on board. I'm sure a lot of that is Stewart-Haas pulling strings behind the scenes, but overall I would say Noah Gragson's Stewart-Haas Racing tenure is off to a better start than many anticipated. Again, Gragson's the youngest driver of the group. I'd argue he has the highest ceiling. Go back to his final few years in Xfinity. He's a 13-time Xfinity Series winner. Gragson has a ton of raw speed, a ton of raw potential that just needs to be refined, perhaps, still. Then lastly, there's Josh Berry. Like Preece, 33 years old, they're basically the same age. The short track veteran has been exactly as advertised these past few weeks. He's 23rd in points, but impressed at the two short tracks. Bristol and Richmond finished 12th and 11th and led laps in both races. It's been cool to see Sonny D step up in a big way, and he has the blessing of Rodney Childers. Rodney Childers has spoken very highly of Josh Berry for years. Berry is a seasoned professional race car driver. I'm not sure he has the highest ceiling of the group, again, considering he's 33 years old, but I'd also argue he has the highest floor. Like, I don't think he's going to flame out and just struggle. He's good. I think we've established Josh Berry is at the very least a good, solid stock car racer. I don't know that he's ever going to be amazing or great. Keep in mind, last season with Junior Motorsports, he went winless. And this next gen car, I'm not sure it plays to his strengths. He ran really well at Bristol, at Richmond, two short tracks with abrasive surfaces where tire conservation comes into play. Most modern NASCAR Cup Series races don't play out like that. So time will tell. We'll see if Josh Berry is able to adapt to a very different next-gen car. So again, I believe if Stewart-Haas Racing loses their Tier 1 status, they should downsize. And if they drop, say, one car, I have a feeling Ryan Preece, unfortunately, will be the odd man out. He's one of the older guys. He's got some support from United Rentals, which is great, but we also see Haas on the hood quite a bit. I get that the 41 is Gene Haas's car. He loves seeing his logo out there, I'm sure. But times are tough for Stewart-Haas Racing, and as money gets tighter and tighter and tighter, the driver who brings the least funding might be the first to be shown the door. I don't know if that's Ryan Preece. It could be Berry. It could be Gregson. Maybe Sonny D would be happy on anyone's car, or Mobile One, or Serve Pro. It's a really tough call. Again, I could argue in favor of any one of these four drivers. I just did. But right now, if Stewart-Haas has to drop one current Cup Series driver, my gut tells me it'll be Ryan Preece. Rodney Childers likes Josh Berry. Noah Gregson's really young, has a really high ceiling, and Chase Briscoe, he's made a deep playoff run before. Unfortunately, Preece may be the odd man out. But it's way too early to tell. Again, this episode was mostly speculation. We have anonymous industry executives saying Stewart-Haas might sell a charter. Doesn't exactly sound like anything is super close to actually happening. So plenty of time to speculate. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. What's your reaction to this report? And if Stewart-Haas does in fact downsize, which driver do you believe is most likely to lose out on their ride? Let me know. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We talk NASCAR all day, every single week. You won't want to miss a thing. A huge thank you to my very generous Patreon supporters as always. Thanks for watching, y'all. Check out my video from earlier today in case you missed it. I will see you again really soon.